Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Cvent Source. I'm Kelly Kopek, Director of Product Marketing here at Cvent, and I'm excited to spend some time with you today digging into what we're seeing across the events and hospitality ecosystem. If you're new here, we pull insights through the data we're getting from all of the use on our platform. And ideally, the session gives you a practical look at how event programs and group business performed last year and how you can turn those insights into smarter decisions. Just a few housekeeping notes today before we get started. You're currently logged into Cvent webinar, but this was also recorded in the Goldcast recording studio. You can access the chat on the right side of your screen, submit questions in the Q&A throughout the session, and we'll respond throughout the session. And you can download the slide deck under resources. And right now, why don't you all go into the chat and let us know where you're tuning in from so you can see where your other attendees are coming from today. Awesome, thank you. So over the last year, we've watched organizers and venues operate in a world of competing pressures. Demand for in-person experiences is strong, expectations from attendees are higher than ever, and at the same time, budgets, teams, and timelines are under real scrutiny. So what's encouraging is that even with those constraints, the story we see is that through all of our data is a story of resilience. Events aren't going away, they're being redesigned. Teams are asking harder questions about format, mix, audience, spend, and outcomes, and they're using data more intentionally to answer those questions. So that brings us to how we're starting the webinar today, 2026 event trends. So I'm not gonna go through a list of fun predictions, but I wanna provide you a point of view that you can use to decide what to do next with your own programs. So when we talk about trends here, we're talking about the strategic shifts we're predicting that come from a variety of different sources. And what we look at every year to kind of put together our 2026 trends is our platform data that we're about to share with you all in a little bit too, across sourcing and our event platform. Some conversations that we have every day with our customers, including planners, marketers, and suppliers. And of course, results from some of those leading programs that we're seeing through our customers and data coming from publications notable in the industry around the world. So with that, I'm gonna get into the trends. So here are our list of 9 2026 event trends. I'm gonna leave this up for a little bit so you can kind of read through them. And I'm not going to go through all 9 of them and just read them out to you. I'm going to make this a little bit more usable. So take a look at these 9, and then I'm going to show you how we group these 9 into 4 anchor stories. So there'll be 4 takeaways you can remember and apply. Okay, hopefully you all read through those 9. So here are the 4 anchors. Think of them as the headlines for everything that you just saw throughout the 9 event trends. We basically anchored them into these 4. AI has moved from experimentation to impact. Trust is the differentiator. And there's a shift from scale to significance. Purposeful event design is redefining behavior and outcomes. Now I'm going to go through each of these to kind of explain the significance. So not that long ago when we thought about AI and events, it kind of sounded like we should probably do this somewhere. Today, the conversation has shifted to, now show me where this actually saves time, saves money, or grows revenue. So AI goes operational means it's embedded in the tools you already use, helping you build agendas faster, personalize communications, and surface insights you wouldn't catch on your own. AI is supporting human teams, not replacing them, taking on the repetitive work so your people can focus on strategy, content, and relationships. And it's connected to real outcomes, from better response times on RFPs to smarter targeting for your campaigns to more accurate forecasting and reporting. So for planners and marketers, the bar is now, don't just show me AI features, show me workflows that actually change my day. And for venues and destinations, it's how can I use AI-powered data to prioritize the right business, respond faster, and win the deals that matter the most. So as AI becomes more common and information becomes noisier, trust is what people are really buying. Your attendees are asking, Can I trust this brand to respect my time and my data? Can I trust that this content is real, not manufactured? Can I trust that if I invest in this trip, this sponsorship, this event, it will pay off? Events are one of the last places where you can earn or lose that trust. Technology can help someone find you, register, and arrive, but once they're in the experience, it's your people, content, community, and execution that build credibility. And for planners, that means being transparent about what data you collect and why, delivering consistent, on-time, on-brand experiences, and designing moments that feel human, not just automated. And for venues and destinations, it's about being a reliable partner, clear communication, realistic availability and pricing, and experiences that make planners look good to their stakeholders. The third shift we're seeing is from how big can this be to how meaningful can this be? Yes, the reach your event has still matters very much, but the more sophisticated your program becomes, the more you care about who's in the room, what happens between them, and what changes happen because they were there. That shows up in several of the trends from that earlier slide. B2B still demands authentic emotion. People want to feel something, not just sit through content. Personalization is attendee-led. They expect choice, tracks, formats, meeting types that match their goals. Exclusivity and micro events drive demand and engagement. Those smaller, curated formats like executive roundtables, customer advisory boards, roadshows, and sponsored experiences are where some of the most valuable conversations now happen. So you might still have a big flagship event, but around it you're building clusters of highly targeted experiences that go deeper with the audiences who matter the most. And for suppliers, this shift means thinking beyond how many room nights to what kind of experiences can this space enable? And how can you support planners in building that layered strategy? And then the final one, it rolls up into purposeful event design. It's no longer enough for a venue to simply check the boxes on capacity and dates. The space itself is part of the strategy. It shapes behavior, influences emotion, and either supports or undermines the outcomes you're targeting. This is where trends like the era of purposeful event spaces, tech design for all, cost-driving sourcing decisions, and measurable outcomes are more crucial than ever. They all converge right here. For planners, purposeful design looks like choosing venues and layouts that encourage connection instead of congestion, pairing your physical space with accessible, intuitive tech so everyone can participate, and making choices about format, location, and budget that are explicitly tied to the outcomes your leadership cares about. And for venues, it's an opportunity to reposition from space provider to experience provider, showing how your space, services, and technology can be configured to drive engagement, conversion, learning, or community, not just room blocks and F&B minimums. All right, so with that overview of the trends, I'm going to bring on my partner in crime, Alex Pladia, and we're going to start going through some of the source data that you're used to seeing from us. And we like to start with this slide to kind of show off how we get our data. And that's really from how our customers are using our event and hospitality platform. And it's based on the powerful network effect our technology creates. We like to call this the Cvent ecosystem. So on the left side is our event technology that empowers planners and marketers to create amazing events across in-person, hybrid, and virtual formats. We have 145,000 planner users who sourced 3.1 million total group RFPs last year.
Awesome. And with over 309,000 suppliers across Cvent, these hotels, destinations, unique venues, and event vendors use our platform ultimately to reach these organizers, showcase their unique event spaces, and collaborate and plan their meetings and events of all types and sizes. And since the inception in 2008, we've had over $158 billion sourced across our marketplaces through Cvent. Now, because we power the events ecosystem, we've got a ton of interesting data that we're going to showcase today. And so now that we've set that context, let's take a look at some of the recent insights we're seeing across specifically our Cvent supplier network. So in 2025, RFP volume was up 1%, room nights were down 4%, and the proposed rate growth was only up about 2%. So while the number of events are up year over year, these RFPs are including less room nights. And the slower growth in ADR means that average rate at which hotel room rates are sold has remained relatively stable over the last year, and we predict something similar in 2026. Now, this is a new slide that we're looking at for those who have attended the source in the past. Here we're looking at the indexing of RFP by attendee range and peak rooms. So the RFP indexing clearly depicts that planners have been shifting their focus to smaller RFPs with peak room nights less than or equal to 100 or attendees less than or equal to 100, due to which those smaller events have seen a rise year over year. And then this shift in turn has also led to that dip in the room nights when we were comparing it to last year. Now, when we look at the booking windows, 92% of the RFPs have a booking window of less than or equal to 24 months. Of this, about 50% of the RFPs sourced are actualized, which means they have event start dates within the same year. Now, similar to rate growth, we're seeing some inconsistency or some consistencies in terms of when these room nights are sourced. For example, on these charts, about 50% of room nights are sourced within 1 year, and the remaining 15% or so are sourced more than 1 year out. This isn't super surprising given the majority of the RFPs coming through to the Cvent supplier network generally aren't those large RFPs with 1,000 plus attendees. Now, why is this important? Well, as a planner for these events, even if they're smaller, it may be a good indicator to start that sourcing process sooner rather than later, especially given that about 50% of that volume is within that first year. Now, later on, Kelly's going to share a little bit more on the context of that full life cycle of an event, from event creation to when the actual event is starting within Cvent. Now, here is another interesting new trend that we're looking at. This takes into consideration the booking windows, specifically in green here is for those smaller RFPs. And here we have about 55% of those small RFPs that are sourced with peak room nights less than 100 have a booking window between 0 to 6 months. So here, when we're looking at new organizations sourcing through Cvent, we are always looking for more and more organizations to come and use our channel. In fact, we've got a team solely focused on getting these existing organizations that use our core event management technology ultimately to source. In 2025, nearly 60% of the organizations sourcing through the Cvent supplier network were new. And these new organizations, they're not just sourcing small meetings and events. The average RFP that you can see here is approximately $96,000. So as new planners are entering the industry, many of you might be wondering, where do you even start? That's why we've built these tools. That's why we're leveraging AI to make it even easier for you ultimately to match with the right suppliers, the right venues, the right destinations for your meetings and events, trying to make it as easy as possible for you to find that venue for your next event. Now, when we look at the existing organizations, right, those customers that have been sourcing with Cvent for the last several years, right, that's about 41% of those existing organizations, of the new organizations, right? 33% of the planners within those organizations are new, right? Which is really, really incredible because there's tons and tons of new relations ultimately for you to be forming within the existing customers that you have today as new and more new planners are adding. So now we're talking about the number of destinations considered for an event. So when you factor in all of the above, planners often need to shop around for many reasons. It might be that the venues are at capacity, it might be budget, but in some cases, it's not just the venue. They might even be considering multiple destinations. Now, as you can see here, 75% of RFPs are sent to a single metro area, 25% are sent to 2 or more metro areas, 15% are sent to 3 or more metro areas. So nearly a quarter of the time, 25% of the time, planners are considering at least 2 destinations for an event. Now, since we primarily have a North American audience today, let's take a look at where these room nights are being sourced. So first off, we talked about how RFPs are up year over year. In addition to that, we saw that room night growth was actually down. Here in green, you'll see those markets that are outperforming their growth from 2024. And in red, we have those markets that have had slower growth, not necessarily a decline in their overall business going into that market, just a slower or lower growth rate. Some of this may be explained by markets that might have generally hosted association or government business. As we know, there was some impacts, especially in Q1 and Q2 of this past year, Other reasons could be the international drop in volume coming into those cities. Lastly, it could also indicate that some of these markets might be losing share to the tier 2 or tier 3 destinations. Now at Cvent, we have planners that are also sourcing internationally, right? And they're not just looking at the US for their events. In 2025, more than 120 countries were sourced by planners from the US. More than 3.1 million room nights have been sourced by US planners internationally, which is up 12% year over year. And lastly, over 2,800 US planners sent an RFP internationally, which was up 5% year over year. On the flip side, when you're looking back at organizations that are sourcing into the US, sorry, you can go to the next slide there. We've seen some interesting trends in international volume. So in 2025, over 1,300 cities have received an RFP. That's actually down 15%. With that being said, though, room nights sourced approximately 850K is up 32% year over year. So more and more international volume is coming in. And lastly, about 900 international planners have sourced into the US market. That was up about 4%. So while we're seeing some positives, we hope this trend continues as the international business is crucial, particularly in some markets. Now, when you look at this by chain scale, again, you'll see that while the number of room nights in purple is down across each of the property scales, with the exception of mid-scale. And then in terms of ADR, we're seeing the largest increases for the luxury, economy, and the independent property scales. Now, when taking a look at the growth in the room nights across the world, all regions are increasing with the exception of the US. So the Americas was down 4%, Europe has grown 6%, the Middle East and Africa has increased by 42%, Asia has increased by 9%, excuse me, I misspoke earlier, Australia is down, Australia is up by 35%, excuse me. And when taking a look at the growth in the room nights across the world, the Americas again is up 1.8%, Europe has grown 4.6%. The Middle East and Africa has increased by 8.5%. Asia has increased by 5.8%, and Australia is flat. So this is one of the newer trends that we've started sharing throughout 2025, and we're excited to continue doing this into 2026. So taking into account the different industries that are sourcing through our network. In green, you'll see the average RFP value. In blue, you will see the change in the number of RFPs year over year. So first, taking a look at the green. Life sciences, financial services, business services, they all hover around that $80,000 to $90,000 range. And then while we have seen modest growth year over year in terms of RFP volume from life sciences and business services, notice that tremendous spike coming from financial services. Really, really incredible there. And then a noticeable drop from manufacturing and nonprofits. Now, it's a challenge, right? Easier said than done. It's a lot of effort to create that perfect event, and we're all witness to the hard work put in by planners and suppliers through our platform. We know about the challenges and difficulties that hoteliers have gone through in the last few years from a staffing perspective, and now planners, they're also very conscious about collecting enough responses from a wide range of venues. On average, they're including 11 venues across 8 brands for each RFP. Now, in return, 6 venues will bid, 4 venues turn down that RFP, and 1 doesn't respond. Now, since planners are not getting enough responses or quality proposals that fit their needs, they're needing to send that same RFP to another batch of venues approximately 35% of the time. Sending the RFPs, evaluating the responses, selecting a venue, it's a lot of work. That's ultimately what makes a successful event. Now, we're seeing some positive trends on the venue side, noticeably that have helped improve planner satisfaction over the last year, which include the increase in bid rate, i.e. the number of bids a planner receives back, the reduction in turndowns, and lastly, a quicker response time. And one of the things that we're really actively doing is working with our products team to figure out how do we continue evolving our response assistant, helping suppliers respond quickly, automatically through AI to the RFPs that are coming in. Now, on the next section here, when you look at suppliers, why they turn down the business, 60% of RFPs, they get turned down due to unavailability of either guest rooms and meeting space or date patterns. And if you don't feel like you're getting enough bids back, as a planner, you can take advantage of submitting those RFPs with alternate dates. This past year, planners were flexible to accept 34% of the proposals with alternate dates that were turned down. So for all the hotels out there that are watching, please pay attention to the alternate dates. You might still be able to win that business, or at least you can start building those relationships for the future by paying closer attention to those RFP details. This is one area where we continue to work with suppliers. Small things like this create a much better ecosystem altogether. So with that being said, I will now turn it over to Kelly, who's going to talk a little bit more about some of the additional data that we're seeing.
Thank you, Alex. So I want to talk to you about the life cycle of an event. And we look at this through a couple of different data points. So what we're looking at right now is at event created date, RFP send date, RFP awarded date, and event launch date, and event start date. So this is truly an end-to-end life cycle of an event. In 2024, you could see the average time from event creation to event start date was 169 days. And by 2025, that had grown to 182 days. So we're seeing events take about 2.5 extra weeks to move through the life cycle year over year. And that might not sound like much, but when you think about how many internal and external stakeholders are involved, that's a meaningful extension. And when we look inside that life cycle, some individual phases can be quite long, specifically from launch date to start date and RFP send date to RFP award date. And this tells us that planning and sourcing for in-person events are not only complex, but also getting more extended over time. There's more time to influence decisions, but also more time where you have to keep stakeholders engaged and aligned. So now if we take a look at how this breaks down by event size, for smaller events, those with 100 to 50 registrations, the average life cycle is 112 days. These events tend to be more straightforward with fewer moving parts, allowing planners to move from initial planning to execution relatively quickly. And now, as we move up in scale, the difference becomes really, really striking in how long this takes. Events with 500 to 1,000 registrations take an average of 152 days from start to finish. That's nearly 50% longer than the smallest events, reflecting the added complexity of managing more attendees, coordinating additional logistics, and ensuring a seamless experience for a larger group. So the most significant increase it's seen with the largest events here, and those with that's the last one on the screen, those events with over 1,000 registrations. These events now average 225 days in their life cycle, and that's more than double the time required for small events. Two phases in particular stand out: the period from RFP sent to RFP awarded, then from RFP awarded to event activation. These two phases account for over 4 months of planning. And this extended timeline highlights the unique challenges of large events that I covered a bit in the last slide. It's more important ever for early engagement, clear communication, and robust project management from large-scale events. For both planners and suppliers, understanding these timelines is key to setting realistic expectations and ensuring successful outcomes. So let's talk about now some of the growth statistics from 2025 versus 2024. So we looked at, this is from our event management data for North America from January through December. You can see here how our key metrics, they've shifted year over year. Number of events has grown 6% year over year, and that's keeping exact pace with registration growth. So it's not just that we're running a similar number of events and squeezing a bit more out of them. We're seeing growth on both sides of the equation, more events and more people choosing to attend those events. So 6% growth isn't just a nice to have uptick. It's a confirmation that events are working and that organizations are investing in them and they're seeing enough value to do more of them and bring more people in and attract more people to those events. So now let's look at the slide where we're seeing when people actually register, and this is the last slide that I'm going to go over with you all today. And again, we're looking at our event management data from 2025 in North America. So we're looking at this for in-person events and virtual events. For those in-person events, 47% of registrations happen within 4 weeks of the event, which is a stark comparison to virtual events where 79%, meaning nearly 4 out of 5 attendees, are registering within 4 weeks of that virtual event. The implication is that format choice and how you market around it have a huge impact on registration behavior. You can analyze when certain types of attendees register and see patterns to design campaigns, pricing, and reminders to pull more people in. For example, when we do Cvent Connect, we know that sponsors are some of those last people to register for our conference. So we account for those registrations later in the process. Okay, and with that, we are going to wrap up today. I'm going to do a quick plug for you all, though. If you're interested in learning more about Cvent solutions, please sign up to complete a demo with us. Just click the button that'll pop up at the bottom of your screen, or you can also fill out our survey to let us know what you thought about the session today. The questions 3 and 4 in our survey will also let you indicate if you're interested in our solutions. And we appreciate all other feedback that you have. And I also want to talk about, I mentioned it a little bit just a bit ago, I want to talk about Cvent Connect. It's coming up in July in Nashville. And if you don't know and haven't been there, Cvent Connect is our go-to annual event for event professionals, marketers, and hospitality experts. So please feel free to check out our agenda. And if you'd like to register, just click the button that'll pop up at the bottom of your screen. Awesome. And with that, I hope you've been putting the questions in throughout the session. But if you have any last questions for us, please feel free to put them in and we can answer those for you right in that Q&A box. And I appreciate your time today. Look forward to hosting you all in a future session. Thanks again.